Welcome to CITE Career Connect with Kate. My name is Kate Whitfield, and I'm a principal with Alta Planning and Design. I'm a professional engineer and urban planner based in Ottawa. This video was created to help people looking for jobs in Canada to connect with CITE members who are working in the field of transportation, engineering, and planning. Without conferences and other chances to meet in person, it's important to create these opportunities to help people network in these times. We've invited people who are currently employed in the public and private sectors to come together for these informal chats. I also invited 3 job seekers to share something of interest to them. Hopefully, what comes out of the short talks is a sense of what transportation jobs are like in Canada, and for those looking for work, a better sense of what might interest them. A bonus element may be hearing about interesting topics in transportation in Canada, and then some networking job search intel. My hope is that some of the information shared here could be used by someone looking for work to better connect through LinkedIn or otherwise. Maybe something is said here that could open a door to a job. For more information on the people featured in this video, check out the YouTube page. Our hope is that new videos are released periodically over the next weeks and months. The CITE website is the best place for more information on how to get involved. Let's get going and see what the participants in today's episode have to share. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's conversation. We'll start with 2 minutes each to introduce a topic of interest to you related to transportation engineering and planning in Canada. Our hope is that these short talks sort of give a sense of what transportation jobs are like in Canada, and for those looking for work, maybe a better sense of what interests you and what you're looking for. We hope we can pull out some networking intel, something, a little nugget maybe for you to follow up on to start a conversation and a connection. And new ways, right, to network. So we're going to try this out today. So I'll introduce each speaker, going between people currently working and those looking for jobs. And we'll see how this goes. So Julia, I'll ask you to start us off. But first, an introduction. Julia Salvini is the first to speak, bringing her insight into what it's like working in engineering as someone with a background in transportation and mobility management. Julia is the president of Salvini Consulting, based in Kitchener, but also is our CITE president, so she has to go first. So I'll pass it over to you, Julia.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks for that introduction. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I understand one of the cool things about working in an organization that's across Canada is that we're all in different time zones, and for some of you, it's still the morning, so it's kind of cool. I wanted to talk a little bit about something that's on my mind right now because of some of the work that I'm doing, but also because of what's going on in my own neighborhood. So I wanted to talk about traffic calming. Right now, there's a traffic calming exercise going on in my neighborhood, and it's specifically about the street that I live on. The recommendations that they're making affect the road that I access my driveway on, and the kinds of things that they're talking about putting in, whether it's speed humps or signage or raised crosswalks, are happening right in and around where my house is. At the same time, I'm working with a local township here, the township of Wilmot, to develop a traffic calming policy. So I've been spending time reading the Canadian Guide to Traffic Calming and speaking with my neighbors, speaking with my colleagues at the township. And the things that I'm thinking about is that, the network means different things to different people. So for the people who are driving in my neighborhood, for example, and many other neighborhoods, the transportation network is a means of getting from one place to another. But right now, what I'm finding is there's a lot of people who are walking and cycling recreationally, more so than usual because of the COVID situation. And so the network becomes something else to a bunch of other users. And it's with that in mind that I'm reacting both as a resident and as a professional working on these things. And one of the things I'm starting to think about is, well, what is everybody's role in that? And the Canadian Guide to Traffic Calming is a really great tool. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, it's a joint tax CITE publication. It provides really good guidance on how how to work with the process of traffic calming. And what I'm trying to wrap my mind around is, what is the role of council? What is the role of the people who live on the street? What is the role of the people who live on the street behind the street? And it's not so straightforward. I thought it would be really straightforward when I was going through it with my neighborhood, but it isn't so straightforward. So that's one of the things I don't have any answers for you. I'm just telling you that's one of the things that's on my mind and what I'm thinking about and the different perspectives.
That was great, and it covered you as a resident and as a professional, and also a consultant working with the city and trying to figure out how policy relates to design. So that's great. So we'll shift over to one of our job seekers. Sarah Libra is with us. She's the honor of the first one to go and give a short talk. You can handle it. I know you can. So Sarah is an urban planner. After finishing her master's in planning from Queen's University, Sarah worked for the Toronto District School Board and as an accessibility specialist in the private sector. So sort of two different types of jobs. Sarah is based in Montreal and is looking for work there. So Sarah, take us through sort of what you wanted to talk about for your 2 minutes.
Yeah, okay. So after graduating with my master's in urban planning, I started to work for a consulting firm specializing in accessibility and universal design for the built environment. As an accessibility consultant, I learned many things about accessibility for outdoor spaces and buildings. For one thing, accessibility is much more than just ramps and elevators. We looked at accessibility for all kinds of disabilities, including people with mobility impairments, who are blind or have vision loss, people who are deaf, hard of hearing, or have hearing loss, and people with sensory impairments. Creating truly accessible and equitable spaces requires designers to consider the needs of all those peoples, and it is important, as chances are at some point in your life, due to injury, accident, or aging, you might temporarily or permanently benefit from accessible design yourself. I learned to look at the built environment with an accessibility and universal design lens. I see barriers in most places I go now. I look to see if benches have armrests and back support, if signage has color contrast and braille, if there is assistive listening provided in buildings, whether there is banding on full height windows so you know that there's glass there. And those are just a few examples of some of the items I look for. I also learned the importance of community engagement with people with disabilities. As a planner, I was taught the value of public participation and getting input from users for plans. And as an accessibility consultant, I was able to help center the marginalized voices by planning meetings for people with disabilities to provide input on site and building designs. In doing this work, I learned how to draft emails to be easily read by people using screen readers. I learned how to develop accessible presentations, including how to best describe site and architectural plans for people who couldn't see them, so that they could offer valuable feedback for the designers. And I saw the importance of these meetings and of listening to their lived experiences and learning from their experiences to improve future buildings. I think this experience truly taught me the importance of engaging with all members of the community, especially equity-seeking groups.
And Sarah, when I met you, instantly you said healthy community, and it was right in everything you ever said.
Yeah.
So I can see your career really filling that out, in your next step. Okay, so back to someone currently with a job in the field, representing the public sector this time. Jen is an engineer with Livable Streets Division at the City of Calgary. She's also the Canadian ITE District Director and would happily explain all the different titles if you ever want to ask her. Jen has worked at the City of Calgary as a transportation engineer for 14 years. Her LinkedIn page says she's responsible for rewriting Calgary's traffic calming policy, which I thought was a pretty good shout out. But I had to say her roots are also Winnipeg, having gone to her schooling from University of Manitoba. So you have to speak to Winnipeg. So with that, Jen, what are you going to tell us about? Uh-oh, muted, my friend.
I was just telling everybody about the beauty of Control D. Oh, well. Here we go. Thanks, Kate, a lot for the intro. I was going to talk a little bit, have a similar message, I guess, to Sarah. Yeah, I've worked at the City of Calgary for going on into my 15th year, so it's gone by fast. And I've had the pleasure of working for Calgary Transit and now Livable Streets. So really working on like high impact community focused projects, lots of LRT and bus rapid transit and traffic calming. And I've always really enjoyed, like, of course, the technical parts are interesting. Like, how can we engineer a better, more inclusive public space? But I think those projects become pretty controversial because you are making changes in people's backyards, just like Julia said. And so really finding ways to have inclusive engagement has been something that I've worked on for the whole 14 years. And I've been able to try some unique challenges or some neat approaches. And I think just really studying, what's worked for me is studying what other cities do and try to bring that home, and then also try to share that with other cities. So it's great to be here today. But just a couple of the approaches that I've been able to try is I was leading an LRT study, the North Central LRT that just got approved again. You'll find things get approved again and again if you work in the public sector. Sometimes they don't get approved, but hopefully. And so we were able to introduce this concept called multiple account evaluation. And that may be not so new in places like Ontario, where the environmental impact process is it's quite detailed and has been around for a long time. But I think so often in transportation, we can evaluate projects from a really narrow set of criteria. And when you broaden that, you can get a lot more people to care about your projects and care about the multiple outcomes that they'll deliver. Another way that's been really, really successful for me is been involving youth. We find when we engage with grownups, grownups can be great, but they're not always very good at imagining a future that's different from today. And so working, going into schools, the teachers are thrilled to give you some of their lesson time, and especially if you can link it to their curriculum. So talk about trees or governance, whatever grade curriculum that connection will be. And get them to come up with concepts or write down stories. Because we found, when we go out to the public and say, this street is not safe for pedestrians, we don't always, the public may not always side with you or agree with you. But then if you have that, in addition to handwritten drawings by kids saying things like, the cars come so close, I think they're going to hit me, you can really build a compelling case to make change. And it just also makes the work a lot more meaningful. So yeah, it'll make it easier, more meaningful, and you'll end up with better solutions. So I think that's what I have to share today, Kate.
Sort of sharing who tells the story and putting it in the language of the group. That's great. That's great. So Mohammed Zaid Shaikh is our next job seeker. So Mohammed graduated with a Master's of Civil Engineering from the University of Windsor. Mohammed has experience in sort of construction management space with drafting and modeling skills. But I'm biased here. When we met, I was instantly interested in your sort of bent towards active transportation and complete streets. Of course, that got my attention. So Mohammed, I'll pass it over to you. No pressure to talk about AT, but tell us sort of your 2 minutes.
Sure. Thank you so much, Kate, for the introduction. That was so good of you. Thank you for arranging this meet with us. Basically, I'm a graduate from Master of Engineering from University of Windsor, just like Kate mentioned, and I hold my bachelor's back from India. I moved to Canada 2 years back, and I'm over here as a graduate looking for jobs in consulting firms in transportation sector as EITs. And so I hold a background in a mixture of construction management as a co-op while I was in my undergrad, and with some of transportation academic projects while doing my master's. Now, something that was of interest to me was how much active transportation is of importance in North American context, because I don't see a similar kind of background when I see the same context back in India or maybe South Asian countries that I have visited. So that's something that I take a lot of learning from, that I can see that how it is implemented over here and what good things go over here. We had this course for integrated transportation and land use modeling that studied the influence that the changes in land use have and transportation has, and how it's interlinked, how one thing helps the other grow. And then it's all, I'm talking to professionals who have knowledge about that for sure. So it's just me, like as a new grad, you get that information, you see how that evolves and how that helps. When you learn these mathematical models that we went through in a lot of assignments and projects, I was astonished to see that these are some things you can predict and you can help influence and change people's habits. So active transpiration was something I was actually really bent towards. Apart from maybe having a personal passion towards biking and seeing that it's something that's really going to help us reduce a lot of issues that are in the environment as of now. I think so transportation goes much more beyond design simulation. I'll give you an example of a project that actually took my interest. Was like a few months back in Bombay, the city where I am from. There is this road that's like a river drive. So we have we have a lot of like it's really high traffic volume area, and at peak times it's unimaginable numbers we can even see over there. Now there's a residential locality just right next to that area. So we have a lot of honking problems. I'm not in Canada. I'm sure not a lot of you might not have experienced that a lot. It's like if someone honks, you're like, oh my God, what's wrong? What did I do? But over there, it's something that's really normal, and it happens on a very regular basis. So the cops and the consultancy firm that was there working on the roads came up with the idea that what if we have a decibel meter attached to the traffic signal, and we set a benchmark, like let's say 85 decibels, and once it goes beyond that, the traffic signal resets again. So you see it count from 90, 85, 80, 10, people are starting to honking for no reason at all. And then when you see it again, so that's one initiative. I was like, oh, wow, that's brilliant. I mean, you don't even need to do a lot of, you need to widen the road. You don't need to make extra biking plans. You just need to get it into the mindset of individuals, the drivers. So I think these are some projects I think that where you go beyond traffic and you go into the you think how people think, their behavior. So these are some projects I have previously worked on. My resume and my LinkedIn profile is much more detailed on that. So I think so that gives a brief introduction about me, and that's about.
That was great, and thank you for sharing that example. Sure. So Jean, well, you're going to speak about the private sector, another sort of Ontario voice from the private sector. So Jean Chartier is the Vice President of Paradigm Transportation Solutions Limited. So this is a consulting practice that does transportation engineering and planning, both public and private. So everything from transportation master plans to traffic impact studies for development to traffic calming work, parking studies. Jean, when you talk, you can add to that list of different type of work. But I will say a private sector kind of experience in Ontario. So Jean, I'll pass it over to you.
Well, thanks a lot, Kate, and thanks for the opportunity to speak today. Half of the faces are people I know and love from many years of being in the profession, and the other half are folks I'm getting to know today. So thanks for the opportunity to speak to you. So I didn't know where to start because I'm probably the oldest one here, and I've been at this a long time now, almost 30 years. And I thought what I would do is maybe share some. Actually, Julia stole my thunder a little bit because I was going to talk about traffic calming, and then I decided that I shouldn't talk about traffic calming because Julia did. I had the good pleasure of actually being on the committee that wrote the traffic calming guide, both the first version and the second version that was done. I've had the opportunity to be involved in a number of sort of national design guides, etc., things of that nature. But the one project that sort of has resonated with me throughout my career actually was when I worked in the public sector. I spent the first 18 years of my career working for municipalities in the Toronto area. And then I got tired of dealing with people's problems and decided that maybe I would move into consulting. And I've been in consulting now for the last 10 years or so. And the one project that someone will always ask you in an interview, what is the project or what is the thing that you've done in your career that you're probably the most proud of? And the project that sort of, for me, sort of set me off early in my career was when I led the development of the regional municipality of Durham's first transportation master plan. The project started in, I think, maybe before some of you were born in 1999, but it lasted a few years, and it was one of the first sort of area-wide multimodal transportation plans. When I started back in the dark ages, everything was vehicular focused. Everything was about cars, moving cars as quickly and as safely as we can through the network, without much regard for active transportation, without much regard for accessibility, for transit, really, those are sort of secondary considerations. And sort of when we went through the first iteration of doing Durham Region's transportation master plan, it really brought a bit of a reckoning sort of to the elected officials and to the public about what did they want to see their transportation system look like in the future. And at that time, we were talking the future was 2021, which interestingly enough is we're going to see next year and see whether the plan was accurate or not. But in those days, there was no talk about transit, there was no talk about active transportation. And it was really sort of the first policy document that the regional council adopted that actually set them in the direction of developing a regional transit system, of evolving with active transportation. And probably from my perspective, being able to look back a plan that was adopted 17, 18 years ago, and I live in the community, and being able to see the transformation that has occurred. And that's probably one of the best things you're going to get out of your career as a transportation engineer or planner, is being able to see how your community changes and grows because of the decisions and because of the work that you do. And that's probably, to me, is maybe the most rewarding project. It was spent a quite considerable amount of my life working on it, but to be able to now see it coming to fruition and seeing the change that's happening as a result of it is actually quite rewarding. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of an insight into sort of some of the work that I've done. As Kate has mentioned, I've had the opportunity to work in a whole variety of different fields, and I would encourage you as you go through your career to take opportunities to do things that are maybe outside of your initial realm of comfort, because it helps you make better decisions. For example, on the accessibility front, if I hadn't had the opportunity in some of the municipal work that I did to be involved with accessibility advisory committees, or have the responsibility for reconstructing sidewalk and things of that nature, that would never have been so prevalent in my thinking as I go on today. So I would encourage you, if there are opportunities to sort of maybe take maybe a side detour for a few years or do something along a different area, that is particularly helpful as you grow your career.
Yeah, and we always say if you've worked public a bit and private a bit, you have a better understanding of the two roles, or sort of at a government or provincial government level or federal. So Selina, we made you wait, sit there watching, but you're last but not least, job seeker. So Selina graduated University of Calgary this past April with a civil engineering degree with a minor in transportation engineering. So Selina's had an opportunity to work as an intern in the private sector as she went through her undergrad, and is in that pivotal spot, right, of finishing school and trying to seek employment, and in this case in Western Canada. So Selina, will pass it over to you for your 2 minutes. Oh, requisite mute. There you go.
Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be part of this new initiative. So yes, as Kate had mentioned, I am from the University of Calgary, and I was part of a Capstone Design Team in my final year of civil engineering, in which my team designed and analyzed solutions to encourage the use of active modes of transportation on the University of Calgary campus. So this is a year-long project in which we first collected data and observed the existing behaviors and transportation infrastructure on campus. Once we'd collected all of our data and had understood the student and staff's behaviors on campus, we were then able to brainstorm ideas and come up with 3 active transportation plans that we felt were innovative and realistic solutions that could one day be implemented on campus. Our first solution was a direct pedestrian path from a highly used LRT station called Brentwood right to campus. Number 2, a cycling ring road around the perimeter of the campus. And then number 3, a complete streets retrofit design within campus. So the pedestrian path design would increase walking traffic to and from the LRT station, but it would also be an innovative covered path. So it would be more accessible and would protect the users from the harsh winter conditions in Calgary. Number 2, the cycling ring road would provide more accessibility to the many campus gateways around the perimeter of the campus, and it would also increase cyclist safety. And then number 3, our complete streets design would work with an existing area within campus and implement some of the complete streets policies and design elements to further increase active transportation modes within campus. And so while our team worked on these solutions and once we finished our project, I think I found it most interesting that our designs had the potential to create a more inclusive, diverse campus. And I think that's definitely one of the many reasons why after my undergraduate degree, I'm interested in pursuing transportation design and engineering as an EIT. Thank you.
And I think your project is great because you have a civil engineering undergrad, but you entered, like, it was a planning spin, because that helps you know both, right? And get a sort of sense of the different roles. I learned what urban planning was because of a campus master plan. That's how I ever found out about this option as a career. Yeah. Okay, well, it seems like traffic calming is a good theme. So maybe we could try, because we're trying to show different types of jobs. So let's use traffic calming. What's a policy example and a design example? Because that could be two different types of focus for an engineer or a planner in a job. So maybe Julia, pick one, and we'll leave the other example to Jen and Jean, and then open it up. Like just something that cities are grappling with in policy or design and traffic calming.
So, okay, I'll start with the policy and maybe build off of what I was saying before. There's no standard way of going through a process to evaluate whether or not you want to get to the point of putting in traffic calming. So from the point that you get a complaint from a resident to the point that you install some kind of traffic calming, there's a whole process there. And as I mentioned, the guide is very good at providing sort of the steps through the process. But what it allows is for different municipalities to make decisions in different ways. So first of, there's sort of two decisions. One, you make a decision that you're going to study, that there's actually a problem you want to study. And then the second decision comes later on. If you decide to study, do you actually implement? And I think what's challenging is that you want to engage the public in a really meaningful way through that whole process. But how do you allow the public to help make the decisions along the way? And, you know, that's where I was sort of alluding to, what is the role of the people who live on the street versus the people who live on the street behind the street? So they use the street, but they don't live on it. And then what is the role of council in helping to make those decisions? Because they're the ones who authorize the money. Yeah. So I think that's an ongoing challenge.
That's great, because we tend to do that, right? Who lives on the street and what do they think? But who travels through that space every day? Mm-hmm. And it's one thing to say, I want slower traffic. It's another thing when your parking stall outside your front is affected with a new bump out. Mm-hmm. It changes the game. So Jen and Jean, either one of you want to take sort of the other part of that or add on there?
Yeah, I guess I think we're in this sort of changing paradigm because as Kate mentioned, I'm rewriting Calgary's traffic calming policy. And so a lot of times we get requests for traffic calming, but we're in this paradigm where the default speed limit is 50 kilometers an hour in just about all of our cities across Canada. And so the saddest part, I think, of my job is going out and, you know, you get the speed study and you see the results and you say, I'm sorry, resident, I know you don't feel safe on your street and you don't feel safe letting your children play, but you don't have a problem. And so we've kind of gotten tired of that. So on the one hand, our council is going to be deciding in the fall about lowering our speed limit. So it actually is at a place where it's safe and people can feel comfortable. But irrespective of that decision, we're starting to say, well, you know what, traffic calming is sort of, it's a great toolkit to make sure that our streets read the design and the design speed. But what if there isn't a design speed problem, we can't just say, no, sorry, go away to our residents. So we're trying to introduce a new policy, a neighborhood streets policy. That's sort of like this umbrella approach to say, maybe we won't install speed bumps or curb bulbs, but we'll have these sort of resident accessible toolkits. So things like street murals and other ways to activate the community. Yeah, so we're actually, interesting, we're treating this as a 2-year pilot policy, and then we're going to sort of kick the tires and apply it to a bunch of projects. We're onboarding 13 different communities, and then after the 2-year period, we'll make some changes, evaluate it, and take it to council to approve for approval. Hopefully approval. We shall see.
So I will put it out there. Any questions? And I picked traffic calming because it sort of came out in the 3 talks. But Selina, Mohammed, or Sarah, do you have a question? And if not, I can keep rolling here, and we can talk also like the geometric design side of this stuff too. It is really interesting. But I'll pause there. So when I say the geometric, Selina, are you going to say something? Because you
sure. I guess with so the engagement part of traffic calming, what are some techniques that you use to engage the community and get their feedback and get their thoughts?
So I guess our traditional format would be to like organize a meeting in the evening in a gym. And it's basically an invitation for people to come yell at us. There's often people who are not supportive will make the time. And so we're really trying to find other ways to engage, and often engaging like right on the street, having a pop-up. COVID has made it a bit more challenging, but we found, just writing questions on the street in chalk and then making sure everybody has their own piece of chalk, that can work. Julia, Jean, you guys must have probably had tried some pop-ups too.
Well, in 18 minutes from now, I'm going to be meeting with staff from the city of Peterborough, Ontario, and we're actually in the process of doing their traffic calming policy. And what we're going to be talking about actually is this very item of what are we going to do for engagement to get people involved, especially as Jen mentioned, with the ongoing pandemic, it certainly has changed our focus of how we deal with community engagement. And I think at first everyone was kind of cool with these, with these video conferences and stuff like that, but it really doesn't substitute the ability to actually talk in proximity to people. I'm not going to say face to face anymore because, we can't really do that, but in proximity of people. So one of the things that we're actually proposing, and it's worked in other communities, is something called a community ambassador, where we identify somebody that lives in the neighborhood that has maybe a little bit of knowledge, or at least is kind of keenly interested in the topic. And they can actually be the municipality's sort of voice in the neighborhood to be able to be their liaison. So they bring people information about what's being planned, what are some of the issues, take that back to the municipality, and then allow them to be able to hopefully strategize around a community plan that will satisfy all the varying interests. Yeah, just I guess from a geometric design, Kate was trying to push a little bit on the geometric design side. One of the things that's really challenging is convincing emergency service providers about implementing traffic calming measures, and that really comes down to a lot to geometric design. Because there's ways you can design the measures so that they have less impact on emergency services, as well as maintenance services for municipalities, like their snowplows and their garbage trucks, things of that nature. So I think there's a way to do that. And also, a lot of these things, what I'm finding actually as I go longer and longer in this, is that a lot of these objectives that were once sort of very apparently divergent actually all start coming together. Like the desire for trying to make streets safer for people to live there is compatible with our objectives around active transportation and having people walk. And it's compatible with our, global concerns about greenhouse gases and things of that nature. So a lot of these things are actually kind of coming together and can be made arguments for other reasons. So you have to be a little strategic from that perspective of being able to do that. That's enough of me talking. I'll let you guys.
Yeah, but taking all that, picture, if you're going to talk about what a typical job is, you can see through what was discussed. Coming up with process, sitting there and writing a memo about the speed of a street, the standard speed of a street. You could be sitting there looking at curb radii, drainage, and clear distance, and that could be your job every day, right? So there's so many parts of traffic calming that, depending where you head, a city, if you're looking to apply, could already have a policy and looking to update it, or they could never have had anything. And in the past, it is councillors who say there's a problem, and that's how a street might make a list. and then it might make a construction project budget. So there's a lot to unpack that's kind of neat in terms of different jobs, right? And it has a huge impact on how we use space to, how a community grows. But it's such a common topic because we build new neighborhoods and we're trying to maybe not create these wide open asphalt surfaces and then saying, now go sign it and make it slower. So I'm going to use the rest of our time. I'm going to shift over just to the idea of talking about job hunting. You have a chance here to talk to people that see resumes, participate in interviews, do a lot of networking in different ways. The most obvious, lovely suggestion is volunteerism with your CITE is a great way to meet people with these faces on the screen. And CITE is obviously a great resource for that. But I picked a topic because we could talk about networking forever. So the topic is cover letters. So I get a ton of letters, and it's really interesting to see either they're very generic, which is fine to an extent, but you get a lot of letters and you get a lot, I guess you have a lot of letters and you decide, am I going to go dive deeper into reading this resume and name? So I would say you have a little bit of time in the opening paragraphs to get someone's attention. But I've said a lot in different forums on cover letters and resumes, so I'll stop there. But either I want everyone to participate, but your own thoughts, suggestions. The obvious thing is Jen is in public sector, so it has a bit of a different theme maybe than how it works in private. But pick one tip so that everyone gets a chance to speak on cover letters if you may. So Jen, you're unmuted, so one tip.
One tip, they're hard. Make sure you get someone to read it. Yeah. And I think I would never suggest using a generic cover letter. I think if you want to show interest, if you're going to go for this job, make sure that it speaks to that job and then get someone else to read it too.
Awesome. Mohammed, do you have a question about cover letters or an observation or something you've noticed?
So for cover letters, one question that I would have is like, how long should it be? And what, because you have a lot of things you need to speak about. You already have things listed on your resume. Or as a recruiter, as a professional who's working in the field, what are you looking for in one of the candidates that might set him out? Because what I do, I usually, in the first paragraph, I speak about the organization, about the working on something that's something that interests me. Then I go on to explain my skills, how I would be an asset, how it aligns with the requirements of the company. And then I go on to finish with maybe something that's an additional project they would be interested to know about. And that's how I end. So I'm not sure how that comes to us, because Kate has helped me get some information on that, how to improve on that. But from other professionals over here, I would like to know their suggestions as well, please.
Okay, I'm going to give one sentence and then I'm passing it on to the others. Anything that shows that you understand the job that you are applying to, which is cruel because you might not necessarily, everybody might not know, but anything that just represents that you know what you're applying to, and I don't just mean the job title, but a sense that you get it, then it helps us see you in that job. So that's my quick one. Jean, you get a ton. Julia, you get a ton. Would you have an answer from Mohammed?
I was going to wave at Jean, but he waved first. So in answer to your direct question, which was how long should the cover letter be? I mean, this is just my own perspective, but I think 1 to 1.5 pages is probably about perfect. If it's much longer than that, I'm not likely to read certainly all of it, maybe none of it. And I guess I'm going to give 2 tips. Sorry, Kate. My first one is I don't want to know that you just know about the job. I want to know that you're actually interested in transportation. I can't tell you the number of cover letters I get that don't even use the word transportation. That's a complete write-off for me from the beginning. And the second thing is a little bit of advice. So for those of you who maybe don't have a lot of experience in the field, find a way to connect the experience that you have doing other things to the job. So if your experience is you were a competitive soccer player when you were growing up, you learn a lot of things about team sports and discipline and whatever. Relate those skills that you learned doing that, that thing that you know really well, relate that to how that makes you a good employee and why you might be qualified for the job.
And Jean, what would you say?
What would I say? I'm a bit of a traditionalist. And when I see people kind of go sort of off the wall in terms of trying to be over the top and selling themselves or selling how much you know about our company or things like that, that tends to be a bit of a turnoff for me. I just, you can't possibly know all there is to know about us and our company. And so I think there's a degree of being a little humble in it. And I think, like Julia, I would keep it to a page. Like, I've always viewed that if you can't say it in a page, you don't really want to, you know, you don't want to roll onto a second page. So I would do whatever I could to try to, when I was applying for jobs, to avoid going onto a second page, because it's a cover letter. It's not intended to be a summary, you know, that kind of thing. So, so I would like you know, the previous speakers have said, I would keep it, you know, make sure, you know, you use transportation, you know, a little bit about us, you know, say, explain why you're interested, that sort of thing. But don't get into, I don't think it's worthwhile to spend a lot of time getting into detail, because if I see a long letter, I'm not going to read it. Especially one that's not formatted well either, and it's formatted all, you know, with some sort of, you know, unique or really sort of out there artistic formatting. Like, I always find if it's sort of keep it to sort of proper business structure, you know, that's just me.
Yeah. So buried in there is keep it simple, but also it's a hard task, right? Like, it's a hard task. We're asking you to do a lot, which says to me it can't be generic, like write it once and send it in every time. Sorry, maybe your resume can be more, but the cover letter, because I'm flipping through a ton of them. And honestly, to be positive, Mohammed, I read yours, and that's why, you know, we've connected since. So you do have a very good letter. So Sarah, you get the last chance to speak because you haven't had a chance yet. Do you have a question or an observation or direction to be easier on cover letters?
My question was going to be about what to do when you don't have a lot of experience in the field, but we've kind of touched on that. So I guess my other question would be about the public, like applying into the public sector more specifically. Because I know at a lot of municipalities, they have specific kind of, you need to almost hit certain keywords and things like that.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I only have my experience, but I found it can be hard to get in initially to the public sector, because a lot of the postings, if you're competing against internal candidates, you're at a disadvantage. So I think my advice would be just go for anything. You know, as Jean said, taking a detour is just going to help you learn more and understand the organization. And honestly, when you first get into the public sector, it's just a lot of figuring out, how does this place work? How does it run? And, you know, what is the city manager? That sort of thing. And so I think, you know, take the opportunity to get in. If you're interested in transportation or Calgary Transit, one of my good friends, he knew he wanted to be a transit planner, and so he started driving buses. And you learn a ton, and you really show that you're committed. So I would do that, and then just don't give up. Just keep going.
And in the overall planning department, it might be you take that planning administrator job or committee of adjustment, not putting that stuff down low, but you take what you can, how you can get in, because it is unfair. Like the planner jobs at the city, the entry level, they still require quite a lot of experience. So I get it. But for you, right? You've had
experience is perfect to get in.
Yeah. But your private sector, you get to show that you have private sector experience.
Right.
Put that right up high, because that's intriguing for somebody. Oh, so she's worked both public and so that's a good thing, because getting the private sector is also attractive. Like when I see somebody, I'm like, oh, they arrived, they want to kind of get what they're signing up for a little bit. I'm more interested, so I think that's great. Well,
the other route I think people take to get into the public sector, there's a lot of NGOs, like not-for-profits, that do really good planning work. The Federation of, we have Calgary communities, but there's the Federation of Calgary or Canadian municipalities. I think there's similar organizations across Canada.
That's a really good point. That's another way in. So to respect everyone's time, and I'm glad we picked one subject in career hunting because we could talk even about this for a long time. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. The first ever attempt at this. I think we did pretty good. So we'll share it and see what happens. But thank you, everybody, for your time.